West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
This is a document that we have just obtained that has not been published elsewhere. It is from Attorney General Merrick Garland. It is addressed to all Justice Department employees. It is dated May 25th, 2022. So that's about 8 weeks ago. But again, we believe the first time this document has been shown to the public. As you can see, it is titled Election Year Sensitivities. Department of Justice employees are entrusted with the authority to enforce the laws of the United States and with the responsibility to do so in a neutral and impartial manner. This is particularly important in an election year now that the 2022 election season is upon us. And as in prior election cycles, I am issuing this memorandum to remind you of the department's existing policies with respect to political activities. And again, this is a memo that is from Attorney General Merrick Garland. It has his signature on the top of it in blue ink. And then it says this under the heading Statements, Investigations, and Charging Near an Election. Quote, the Department of Justice has a strong interest in the prosecution of election-related crimes, such as those involving federal and state campaign finance laws, federal patronage laws, corruption of the election process. As department employees, however, we must be particularly sensitive to safeguarding the department's reputation for fairness, neutrality, and nonpartisanship. Simply put, partisan politics must play no role in the decisions of federal investigators or prosecutors regarding any investigations or criminal charges. Law enforcement officers and prosecutors may never select the timing of public statements, attributed or not, meaning on background or not, investigative steps, criminal charges, or any other action in any matter or case for the purpose of affecting any election or for the purpose of giving an advantage or disadvantage to any candidate or political party. Such a purpose or the appearance of such a purpose is inconsistent with the department's mission and with the principles of federal prosecution. If you face an issue or the appearance of an issue regarding the timing of statements, investigative steps, charges, or other actions near the time of a primary or general election, contact the Public Integrity section of the Criminal Division for further guidance. Such consultation is also required at various stages of all criminal matters that focus on violations of federal and state campaign finance laws, federal patronage crimes, and corruption of the election process. And now get this. Finally, department employees must also adhere to the additional requirements issued by the Attorney General on February 5th, 2020. February 5th, 2020. Governing the opening of criminal and counterintelligence investigations by the department, including its law enforcement agencies, related to politically sensitive individuals and entities. See Memorandum of Attorney General William Barr, February 5th, 2020. Any questions regarding the scope or requirements of the February 2020 Attorney General's memorandum should be directed to the Public Integrity section. Again, this memo from Merrick Garland to the Justice Department, to all Justice Department employees, was sent out about 8 weeks ago in late May. We have just obtained it. We believe this is the first time it's been made public. And in large part, this memo from the Attorney General follows both the letter and the spirit of previous letters from other attorneys general around election time. basically says, look, we can't look like we're acting to effectuate some particular partisan outcome. Around election time, that means we may delay certain steps we would otherwise take in order to avoid even the perception that we are trying to influence election outcomes. We have seen that kind of guidance before from attorneys general of all stripes. That's fine. That's at least non-controversial. But this last part about Bill Barr's instructions from 2020, that's kind of a surprise. February 2020, Trump Attorney General Bill Barr put out new guidance over and above what all attorneys general had previously said. And what Bill Barr said in February 2020 was specifically that, in essence, nobody's allowed to investigate anybody connected to a presidential candidate without his permission, personally, as Attorney General. Barr's memo from February 2020, the language of it specifically, it said, quote, no investigation, including any preliminary investigation, may be opened or initiated by the department or any of its law enforcement agencies of a declared candidate for president or vice president, a presidential campaign, or a senior presidential campaign staff member or advisor, absent prior written approval of the Attorney General through the Deputy Attorney General. Trump Attorney General Bill Barr established that new rule in February 2020, no investigating any declared candidate for president or anybody working for that candidate unless I personally give my permission. That new rule was established by Bill Barr when he was working for Donald Trump. Merrick Garland has just formally extended that guidance and told every employee of the Justice Department that it is still in effect. Notice went out in late May. We are reporting the memo here, making it publicly available for the first time. Well, what's happened in the meantime since that guidance went out from Merrick Garland to every Justice Department employee, telling them that the Bill Barr advice is still in effect, and any investigation, including the opening of any investigation that applies to a candidate for president or anybody working for a candidate for president, that has to get his personal sign-off. What has happened since late May when this went out? Well, former President Donald Trump has had the delightful experience of the January 6th investigation, essentially rolling out a real-time, prime-time criminal referral of him to the Justice Department. Justice Department, which is poking along with its own cases at its own pace, maybe more interested in the fake electors part specifically, maybe just spending a lot of time watching the January 6th investigators, marveling at all the neat stuff they've turned up that the Justice Department is apparently learning about at the same time we all are by watching the hearings. That's happened since this memo went out. And also since this memo went out, Trump has responded to all these revelations about him in January 6th by reportedly moving to speed up his own declaration that he's going to be a candidate for president again. And that, of course, is despite the interests of the Republican Party, which will likely not be helped at all by him telling the country formally that he intends to lead the Republican Party again right before people have to decide this fall whether to put Republicans in power in Congress. It wouldn't be good for the Republican Party if Trump announces he's a candidate for president again before the midterm elections happen. Wouldn't be good for his party, but it would be very much in keeping with his own interest in putting as many roadblocks as possible in the way of any possible prosecution of himself. Jennifer Rubin, writing at the Washington Post today, said the January 6th committee's remarkable success in fact-finding and presenting evidence against Trump leaves the Justice Department on the defense and scrambling to staff up. The department now faces the prospect that Trump will announce his presidential run in the fall, which the former president will use to cast any subsequent charges as political efforts to keep him from office. Fair enough. January 6th investigation chairman Benny Thompson was just asked about this tonight.
What do you think the implications of the former president announcing another presidential run? He's clearly toying with doing it at some point in the early fall. What impact does that have on your investigating? He's an active candidate.
2 years before the election?
Yeah.
I would think no.
Even, it's unorthodox perhaps, but even if it is.
Look, we are a nation of law, and if a person breaks the law, or is accused of breaking the law, he's not one who can just choose because he's running for president. So, Donald Trump is just like any other American citizen.
If a person breaks the law or is accused of breaking the law, he's not one who can just do what he chooses because he's running for president. So Donald Trump is just like every other American citizen in this situation. Yes, it would be unorthodox for him to announce 2 years in advance that he's a candidate for president. Why would he do that? Well, now we know, now that we've obtained this Justice Department memo from a few weeks ago, now we know for sure that it does kick something into action. If he, in fact, announces himself as a declared candidate for president, that means any investigation that relates to him or anyone working for him has to be personally cleared in writing through the very highest echelons of the Justice Department.
It is Tuesday, the 19th of July of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. It always has, and it always will, because that's how the spice trade worked. Kind of still works the same way. Alrighty. A little small program reminder. There is roasted corn in the Tarrytown Chowder. That's how we do it here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. That's right, roasted corn. And oftentimes what we will do is that we will soak the corn in a lemon and lime and salt water bath for a copious amount of time, actually, and then roast those husks in there, or roast those ears of corn in their husks. I'll get it out. And it's good that way. Okay, so try it, and then you just take it off with a knife, get all of the stringy parts out. You can do that, and throw it in your chowder. It is good. It is. All right, I have a couple of concerns about the Garland Memo. One is, yikes, what the hell? And the other one is that Merrick may be laying down a marker for those maggots still embedded within the DOJ. That you're not going to go after Joe Biden. You're not going to go after Kamala Harris. You're not going to go after their kids and their family and all that BS when they're declared candidates. Of course, now Trump wants to declare his presidency 2 years out. Because, look, he's under a cloud, isn't he? Okay. I also thought maybe, because if I was writing this for like a TV, like crime courtroom drama, maybe Merrick is trying to entrap Trump. You're running for office to keep from being investigated and convicted of crimes. What crimes do you think that you're running from? Okay. And then, Trump will obviously say, it's all a witch hunt, it's all partisan. I love how the J6 committee is partisan when it has two prominent, I got to tell you, quite conservative Republicans on it. I know they kicked them out so they can say, well, they're not Republicans. Yeah, well, they may be the only ones left. And people wonder how you had Vichy France. Remember, they called, back in the day, the French were called surrender monkeys. The Republicans are surrender monkeys to Nazism and active Russian measures. Or is it Russian active measures? Must be Russian active measures. Okay, this is where we are. I heard Fulguzzi, one of the analysts on MSNBC, worked in the DOJ, FBI. Fulguzzi. And he sat in on jury selection for the Bannon trial. And he has a concern that I think a lot of us have concerns over with our jury system, that it seems to have now evolved into this weird idea that the only way anybody can get a fair trial is if you have a jury of the most ignorant, unengaged, uninvolved citizens in our great country we call the United States of America. Because we have a lot of states. I don't mean like geographical states, but state of mind, state of being, and somehow we're united in that. All right. But is it any wonder, I gotta tell Frank, is it any wonder why they have no civic knowledge? It's because no one learns civics anymore. It's not taught. And that was by design. Because if you're going to mold a population to be a bunch of good Germans, you don't want them knowing anything. Go out and buy something and shut up. Okay, that's where we are. And did we let it happen? Maybe. I mean, I just want to remind or maybe give some advice to the young'uns out there. We said the same thing. Okay? It is a massive undertaking, especially sometimes when you got to hone in and just be able to find a glass of water to drink. Yeah, maybe you ought to learn a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Kind of hard to attend to government affairs when you're parched and you're out in the desert and you realize this used to be a really nice forest just a few years ago. Just a few. Okay. Europe is burning up. We'll attend to that a little bit during the weather report, but it's burning up. Okay. And they don't have air conditioning there as part of their lifestyle. I have to admit, their idea of staying cool is a lot more natural. And it can be done. But there's only so many rooms in the catacombs. It's cool there. Yeah, there's catacombs below the streets of Paris. Can be cool. And sometimes out, like in the countryside down around Cannes, there's quite a few limestone caves that you can get cool in. But, they could fall on you, too. You never know. Well, enough of that. We do have a curated show here today, and we ought to get into it. So why don't we? Except I am reminded that Greg Abbott, Texas governor, never went to any funerals of any of the little kids or the teacher that got killed. And I know why. Because the default position of Republicans in anything is to lie and then to keep lying. And why would he want to surround himself with a bunch of grieving parents who want the truth? Who demanded leadership? I mean, obviously that guy's idea of leadership is telling people what to do, not listening to what people need. Oh, he listens to what people need if they're lining his pockets. All right. You need that big hat to be able to hold all the money you're getting from all the bribes and stuff, I guess. When they say all hat, no ranch, it's because they got all their possessions in their hat. Lots of it, too. Then they can accrue interest. Seems like a pretty good deal there in Texas. Let us now tell you what we have curated for you in the curated part of the show as we begin here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. America wants more red flag laws, but anti-government gun groups and Republican-controlled states don't. No, they don't. In response to Manchin sabotage, Biden could declare a climate emergency as soon as this week. Yeah, but we have to listen to what the 14th century, 13th century, maybe even the 11th century maggot wing of the Supreme Court tells us we have to do. There is a constitutional study that says Congress is the preeminent branch of government. Not SCOTUS, not the executive, the representative part. Just saying. And the Library of Congress's holdover Trump-era renovation plan is not only a desecration, it is nothing short of vandalism. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Sri Lankan lawmakers prepare to vote on a new president. And lawmakers promised more laws and enforcement of them after a 5-year government report found Australia's environment continues to deteriorate due to climate change and resource extraction. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln, who will be attending in person for the first time in 2 years. Yes, in person, Netroots Nation 2022 in Pittsburgh this year, and Kelly Lincoln will be attending. And stay tuned for quite a bit of content that we always bring from Netroots Nation. Thank you, Kelly, for doing so. If you would look across the bottom of our homepage from that chat room link I just mentioned that's monitored by Kelly Lincoln, who will be going to Netroots Nation 22 in Pittsburgh this year, if you look to the left, you'll see the link to our Patreon page. And that is there because we need help paying our bills. All right? We do. We get to these confabs on our own dime, by the way. But we do need help paying our bills. And if you could help us do that by maybe sending us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, if you could do that, we're able to collect those dollars and put them in a big kitty. And it purrs, and the next thing we know, we're paying our bills, flying under the radar, and continuing this powerhouse of resistance, as it has been resisting in a powerhouse mode for the last 11 plus years, 24/7, 365. Who does that? We do, because it's a civic duty. Yeah, we were taught civics when we were kids, weren't we? Yes, we were. Anyway, our civic duty is to resist turns out to be the violent takeover of representative democracy, not only here in the grand old United States of America, but around the world. And we need to be a bulwark against that. And thank you for your generosity in allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended. Oh, those so many years ago. Okay, got that out. Anyway, all kidding aside, thank you for your generosity. It helps. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that and a whole lot more. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I incidentally post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. Actually, that's not about 10 minutes. That is 10 minutes because it's automatic. Put it in queue, put the time in, hit publish. It's in queue. It goes automatically. And then I scramble to get those show notes and links up on social media platforms like Twitter. But if you follow me there, you can get the general show notes and links pages there. And you can find the current one when I get it up. If I'm not able to get it up in time on Twitter and other social media platforms, thank you very much. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, really wherever podcasts can be found. And also the deep archive of the Netroots Radio Library for the last 11 years can be found at the Internet Archive at archive.org. Do not burn down the Digital Library of Alexandria. Do not do it. Okay. You know what I'm talking about. Internet Archive is, for some reason, fending off onerous lawsuits because, well, don't sell on Amazon, I guess. All right. As I don't want to get into it. We have a curated show here. We need to stay focused. Yes, we do. This first offering, by the way, in terms of staying focused, is out of the Washington Post by Kimberly Kindy. After 17 high school students and staff were killed by a mass shooter in 2018, Pennsylvania State Representative Todd Stevens watched his GOP cohorts in Florida rally around a new red flag law. Such measures, which aim to temporarily remove guns from people at risk of harming themselves or others, found rare bipartisan accord there after the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School massacre as a way to reduce gun violence without violating the Second Amendment. Well, the narrow Scalia interpretation of the Second Amendment. Let's not forget that. But when Stevens was inspired by Florida's success to propose a similar measure in Pennsylvania, his Republican colleagues stalled it out, arguing that it could infringe gun owners' constitutional rights, spark costly court battles, or become a vengeful tool for people to disarm their enemies. Oh, too bad. It was frustrating and disappointing, Stevens said. It took children dying in Florida and a police officer dying in Indiana before they passed their red flag laws. I pray to God that is not what it will take for us to act in Pennsylvania. Now, red flag laws have once again become a focal point thanks to the bipartisan gun deal signed into law last month by President Biden, which aspires to spark more states to adopt the measures by providing a legislative framework and implementation grants, and to improve public education about the laws in states that already have them. Proponents say they are common sense laws backed by numerous studies showing they save lives, but we're talking about maggot Nazi Republicans that we're attempting to appeal to, who believe the Second Amendment gives them the right to kill their wives, their kids, their moms, their dads, and even themselves because of the Second Amendment. Tony Rahm and Jeff Stein of the Washington Post bring us this next offering here on the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. President Biden is considering declaring a national climate emergency as soon as this week, as he seeks to salvage his environmental agenda in the wake of stalled talks on Capitol Hill. And that's according to three people familiar with the matter who spoke on condition no one tells them who they are as they discussed the private deliberations. The potential move comes days after Joe Manchin told Democratic leaders that he does not support his party's efforts to advance a sprawling economic package this month that includes billions of dollars to address global warming. You know, a package he's been negotiating, apparently in bad faith all this time. If an emergency is invoked, it could empower the Biden administration in its efforts to reduce carbon emissions and foster cleaner energy. And what's wrong with that? Well, apparently the fossil fuel people think it doesn't make money, but you know what? It does. Two of the individuals with knowledge of the discussions also said they expect the president to announce a slew of additional actions aimed at curbing planet-warming emissions. The exact scope and timing of any announcement remain in flux. Top aides to Biden are debating the best course of action as another punishing heat wave has descended this week on the central United States, and as similar weather patterns are breaking temperature records across Europe. Many Democrats have called on the White House in recent days to use its powers to address global warming, as hopes for congressional action have faded. Peggy McGlone of the Washington Post brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A proposed change to the ornate main reading room in the Library of Congress that critics say would remove the symbolic and functional heart of the 1897 Beaux-Arts masterpiece has landed the library on the D.C. Preservation League's 2022 list of most endangered places. The Library of Congress plans to remove the mahogany librarian's desk that rises some 16 feet in the middle of this spectacular first floor room and replace it with a circular window in the floor that will offer a view of its decorative dome to visitors looking up from the floor below. When the D.C. Preservation League announced the listing last month, it described the alteration as ill-advised and unnecessary and said it would desecrate the reading room's character and function. It asked Congress and the architect of the Capitol, the federal agency responsible for the Capitol complex, to stop it. The League's listing is the most recent public criticism of the proposal, which was unveiled more than 3 years ago under Trump. It follows a retired librarian's complaint submitted to the Library of Congress Inspector General in April, and expressions of outrage from arts and civic leaders. I am appalled at this proposal, Arthur Cotton Moore, the consulting architect on the building's renovation between 1981 and 97, said in a recent phone interview. We are trying to head off a tragedy. The alteration is part of a $60 million makeover of the Thomas Jefferson Building, one of the 3 Library of Congress structures on Capitol Hill. The makeover includes additional exhibition space, a learning lab, and an orientation center, and is intended to improve the visitor experience and increase attendance. Principal Deputy Librarian of Congress Mark Sweeney called the project a game changer that is critical to the D.C.'s future. The D.C. Preservation League's posting about the plan has several errors, he added, including that the idea that the library is turning away from its central function as a place of scholarship. Congress has given the library $40 million for the project since 2019, and the library is close to reaching $20 million in private donations to cover the balance. And though the design is not finished, the library hopes to have final plans by the end of the year. That leaves the plan's critics little time. This is nothing short of vandalism. This is one of the most recognizable interiors in the nation, and that room is its heart, Pat Tiller of the Committee of 100 on the Federal City said. If it were a critical need, that would be one thing. But for a viewing platform, it's a small, silly gesture. Indeed. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Hi, and welcome to COVID Quickly, a Scientific American podcast series.
This is your fast-track update on the COVID pandemic. We bring you up to speed on the science behind the most urgent questions about the virus and the disease. We demystify the research and help you understand what it really means.
I'm Tanya Lewis.
I'm Josh Fishman.
And we're Scientific American's senior health editors. Today, we'll look at how new Omicron subvariants are already increasing cases and hospitalizations.
And we'll try and figure out if fall vaccine boosters should contain standard Omicron or some of those new subvariants instead. It's the height of summer here, and we were kind of hoping for a break, but we're already seeing another COVID surge. This time, it's driven by Omicron subvariants BA5 and BA4. What do we know about them so far?
Yeah, Josh, well, unfortunately, the lull after the last surge didn't last very long. BA4 and BA5 are offshoots of the Omicron variant, a version of which caused a massive wave earlier this year. BA5, and to a lesser extent BA4, now make up more than 70% of COVID infections in the US. And they are the most capable of evading our immune response from vaccination or infection of any variant so far.
Now you have me worried. Do we know if these subvariants are causing more severe disease?
Well, we do know that we're seeing upticks in hospitalizations in countries around the world, including here in the US. The variants appeared to cause more severe disease in hamsters, but there's not yet clear evidence of this in people. But the more people who get infected, the more people who will end up in the hospital. It's just numbers.
Right. Even if the portion of severe disease stays the same, the absolute number will climb along with these infections. Now, the subvariants are already dominant in some countries. Can we learn anything from those places about what might happen here?
Well, it's hard to make direct comparisons because each country has its own patchwork of immunity to the virus. But we can see a clear pattern elsewhere. BA4 and BA5 were first seen in South Africa, and then in Portugal, where they caused a spike in hospitalizations, despite the country's high vaccination rate. This is now happening in many other countries.
And previous infections don't appear to protect against these variants as well, do they?
That's right. People who had the original Omicron variant, BA1, seem to have a higher rate of reinfection with these newer Omicron subvariants compared to those infected with previous variants. That's troubling because it seems like hybrid immunity from vaccination plus infection no longer seems to last that long.
So are we just going to keep getting COVID over and over and over again?
Well, possibly, unless vaccine makers can develop new booster shots that target Omicron subvariants. That could improve our protection. It seems likely the US could face another fall or winter COVID wave. But we could have better booster shots to ward it off. Josh, what are the chances of that?
It does look like better boosters are coming, Tanya. The question is whether they'll get here in time to stop that fall wave that you mentioned. And the timing seems to depend on what vaccine makers put in the shots.
So what are the choices?
Well, both Moderna and Pfizer began developing shots with the ancestral Omicron variant months ago, and Moderna has already said those could be ready by August. But the FDA and its Vaccine Advisory Committee just said that the new boosters should be built around the new subvariants, BA4 and BA5. And the vaccine makers say that those shots, which they're just starting to test, wouldn't be ready until October.
But that will be too late to fend off a fall wave. Why pick the slower route?
Because it looks like boosters using BA4 and 5 will protect people better, since those subvariants are the ones dominating new infections right now. So they'll either be the ones circulating in the fall, or those fall viruses will be very similar. The FDA wanted boosters that are more likely to produce antibodies that neutralize the subvariants. And lab tests indicate that vaccines built around ancestral Omicron don't do that well enough. The subvariants are just different enough from their ancestor to evade an Omicron-prompted immune response. The idea behind the boosters is to trigger broader-based immunity. So the shots contain genetic material from the original SARS-CoV-2 virus, the one that hit us in early 2020, as a foundation. And then they add in material from the new subvariants. It's basically teaching your immune system to respond to a wider spectrum of virus versions.
So this is kind of a race against time, and virologists are hoping the boosters are so effective they can stop or slow down a new wave.
Yes, it's a race. I think the FDA was convinced by data showing that people infected by ancestral Omicron were getting reinfected by the subvariants. So they were afraid that the same kind of thing would happen if they rolled out old Omicron-based boosters. Health officials were also worried that people wouldn't get such boosters. That's already a problem. 3/4 of people eligible for boosters have not gotten them, and there seems to be a perception that the shots, based on the 2020 virus, are outdated. Peter Marks, who runs the FDA's vaccine office, says he hopes effective boosters against the latest subvariants will convince a lot more people that the shots are up to date, and they should roll up their sleeves.
What happens, though, if the fall virus is some new, really different version? New versions seem to keep turning up every couple of months.
It is a bit of a gamble, but Trevor Bedford, an evolutionary biologist at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center, thinks it's a good bet the fall virus will be pretty similar. He tracks the way the virus mutates and says all the recent changes keep new versions within the Omicron branch of the virus family tree. Since those versions have been wildly successful at spreading, he expects that trend to continue. And this summer, vaccine makers and the FDA will be testing those new boosters to make sure they are just as successful at keeping up.
Now you're up to speed. Thanks for joining us. Our show is edited by Jeff Del Vicio and Tulika Bose.
We're going to take a short summer break for the next 2 weeks.
Even in a pandemic, you need some time off.
Especially in a pandemic.
But we'll be back the first week of August with a new episode of COVID Quickly.
And check out Siam.com for updated and in-depth COVID news.
Don't you wish your life came with a warning app?
Stop. That dog does not want to be petted.
Just a little heads up before something bad happens.
Move your coffee cup away from your computer.
Oh, no.
So you can have more control.
Stop. You're texting your boss by mistake.
Uh-oh. Well, life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes like managing your weight, getting active, stopping smoking, and eating healthier, you can stop prediabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. It's easy to learn your risk. Take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Warning. The cap is loose on that ketchup.
Ugh. Don't wait. You have the power to change the outcome. Visit doihaveprediabetes.org today. That's doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Heart disease and stroke can be catastrophic. They're leading causes of death, disability, and healthcare spending in the U.S., yet they're largely preventable. Alarmingly, heart disease and stroke are taking a toll on middle-aged adults 35 to 64, with over 800,000 deaths and hospitalizations in 2016. Million Hearts is a national initiative focused on preventing 1 million heart attacks, strokes, and other cardiovascular events by 2022. Coordinated actions by Million Hearts partners in communities, healthcare, and public health will keep people healthy, optimize care, and improve outcomes in populations at risk. Everyone has a part to play. Focus on the ABCs of heart health. A. Aspirin use when appropriate. B. Blood pressure control. C. Cholesterol management. And S. Smoking cessation. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Although we haven't even gotten through this year's midterm congressional elections, it's still not too early to start examining some of the characters who hope you will make them president in 2024. I know you don't want to, but we must. That's because corporate elites have already chosen their favorites, and they intend to use massive sums of money, lies, more money, PR slickum, and even more money to slide their toady into the Oval Office, hoping you don't discover until it's too late that their chosen one really is a toad. Take Ron DeSantis. The GOP's far-right, power-hungry, narcissistic Florida governor promises to be the next Donald Trump, only more effective and not as nice. For example, his favorite gubernatorial hobby is the Orwellian practice of monitoring and censoring people's speech and thoughts, culling out ideas he deems objectionable. Don't say gay is his most infamous dictate to the state's teachers, but he has also outlawed any teachings that might, quote, denigrate the Founding Fathers. Nor will he tolerate the study of institutional racism in America. Indeed, he has even mandated that social studies textbooks, get this, must not include concepts of social justice. Ron adamantly opposes what right-wingers call a woke society. He wants one that's asleep, sound asleep. He recently rallied his right-wing cadre to ban some math textbooks. Yes, math. They screeched that some real-life topics like wage disparities are being used to make math problems relevant to today's students. So it was Fahrenheit 451 for those books. Thus far, DeSantis' censorship binge has nixed 42 math books for, quote, incorporating prohibited topics. This is Jim Hightower saying, did I mention that DeSantis is also forming his own gubernatorial military force? A state army he can deploy in emergencies. What's an emergency? He says he'll decide.
The story of the 10-year-old rape victim in Ohio, sadly, is not all that rare. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Indeed, in Ohio itself, in 2020, according to that state's Department of Public Health, 52 girls under the age of 15, an average of one per week, received an abortion. Across the country, in 2017, the last year for which data is available, there were almost 4,500 pregnancies among girls under the age of 15, with 44% ending in abortion. The data does not make clear the numbers that resulted from rape or incest. What is clear is that many states now or soon will prohibit all abortions. And in some states that theoretically would permit abortions in cases of rape or incest, the barriers to accessing care, especially for young people, barriers such as the requirement of police reports, no available providers, lack of transportation, no legal support. Those barriers will, as a practical matter, make this medical care unavailable. As Dr. Caitlin Bernard, the Indianapolis OB/GYN who performed the abortion for the 10-year-old who had to leave her home state, said, quote, "My heart breaks for all survivors of sexual assault and abuse. I am so sad that our country is failing them when they need us most." The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1848. That was the day the Convention on Women's Rights began in Seneca Falls, New York. The organizers of this convention brought together some of the leading women's activists of the day, such as Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Lucretia Mott. The meeting included numerous discussions on the role of women in society. Leaders presented a declaration of sentiments. It included a list of oppressions faced by women of the day. Several had to do with work and economic issues. For example, it noted that men monopolized nearly all the profitable employments, while women could earn only a scanty remuneration. It also declared he closes against her all the avenues of wealth and distinction, which he considers most honorable to himself. As a teacher of theology, medicine, or law, she is not known. Despite these limitations, many women, poor women in particular, were forced by economic necessity to work. By 1840, 8,000 women and girls as young as 13 worked in the New England textile mills. Women almost always earned far less than men. Female textile mill workers in Massachusetts had formed the first union of working women in the United States, the Lowell Female Labor Reform Association. Of course, the Seneca Falls Women's Rights Convention provoked scorn and outrage from many, especially men. A local newspaper wrote, "This bolt is the most shocking and unnatural incident ever recorded in the history of humanity. If our ladies will insist on voting and legislating, where, gentlemen, will be our dinners and our elbows? Where are our domestic firesides and the holes in our stockings? Even today, women still earn less than men. For every dollar men earn, women only earn 78 cents. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 62 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high, this weather station says 98, though it is at an elevation a bit higher than where the mothership is, and we track a little bit warmer where we are. So we are actually expecting about 101 to 102 here at the mothership in Rogue River. And it will be mostly sunny conditions throughout the day, and winds will be out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight with lows in the low 60s. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10, and mainly sunny tomorrow with highs over 100. Winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus. Actually, we have another update. We are now standing at 476,099 confirmed cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon, but our deceased remain at 556. Grass pollen is rated high in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the Rogue River Valley region is good. Has inched up a little bit from yesterday. It's now at 34 parts per million. And of course, that daytime UV index is very high at level 9. Do take care. Barometric pressure is rising at 30 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 70%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 100 degrees and sunny with a heat advisory that will kill even healthy people. Paris is 104 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny with a heat advisory that will kill, that says this heat will kill even healthy people. Rome is 97 degrees Fahrenheit and fair, with a heat advisory that will not only kill people who are healthy, but also could impact important electrical infrastructure. So you decide which is more important. Kyiv is 70 degrees and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 80 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 85 and fair. Tokyo is 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 50 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 53, mostly cloudy with a fog advisory on the bay. And New York, New York is 88 degrees sunny with a heat advisory that will kill unhealthy people. I think healthy people are going to be okay in that one. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Christian Francis of the Associated Press will bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Sri Lanka's Prime Minister and acting president will face two rivals in a parliamentary vote on Wednesday on who will succeed the ousted leader who fled the country last week amid huge protests triggered by its economic collapse. The six-time prime minister, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, I'm sorry, is a seasoned politician with wide experience in diplomatic and international affairs and has been leading crucial talks on an economic bailout package with the IMF. He is backed by members of the fragmented ruling coalition, but is unpopular among voters who view him as a holdover from the previous government that led the country into economic catastrophe. The 73-year-old Wickremesinghe was appointed prime minister by deposed President Gotabaya Rajapaksa in May to help restore Sri Lanka's international credibility.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Rod McGurk of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A 5-year government report found Australia's environment continues to deteriorate due to climate change, resource extraction, and other causes, prompting leaders to promise new laws and enforcement of them. The State of the Environment report also adds political pressure on the government to set a more ambitious greenhouse gas reduction target when Parliament resumes next week for the first time since the May 21 elections. The previous Conservative government received the report in December, but decided against making it public before the elections. The center-left Labour Party won on pledges, including greater action on climate change. It wants a target to reduce emissions by 43% below 2005 by the end of the decade, enshrined in law when Parliament sits on July 26. Several unaligned lawmakers want an even more ambitious target. Environment Minister Tanya Pilbaresk said the report sent a very strong message that we need to do better, but she rejected calls for deeper emission cuts. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.